Welcome to the deep dive. If you feel like you're just drowning in news alerts about another massive data breach, well, you're definitely not alone. It feels like every week there's another headline, social network leaks, hacker groups making off with just incredible amounts of user data.
It really does create this sense of helplessness, doesn't it? You hear the news, maybe you quickly change a password, kind of out of panic, and then you just try to push it out of your mind. But, well, the risk doesn't vanish just because the headline does.
And that's exactly the tension we want to unpack today. We've really dug into the source material you shared, and our mission, really, is to peel back those layers. We want to understand the why and the how behind these leaks, look past the immediate noise and really analyze the persistent risks to your digital life. And if we start with why, the motive, well, the immediate financial reason is just huge.
Oh, it's absolutely the main driver. The sources are quite clear on this. Almost 90%, maybe even a bit more, of all these attacks on social networks, they're purely about financial gain. The goal is pretty straightforward. Turn that data into cash, either by selling it directly or using it for really sophisticated fraud down the line.
And the prices on the black market, it's shocking. Not because they're high, but actually because they're often so incredibly low. You can find credit card details starting around, what, $20? Depends on the credit limit attached, I suppose.
Yeah, that's about right.
But the really chilling part is how cheap the most sensitive stuff is. Medical records, social security numbers, sometimes as low as $10.
$10.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. When information is that cheap, $10 for an SSN, it feels like. Well, it suggests they aren't just looking to commit one quick identity theft. It seems less like a targeted theft and more like a bulk commodity sale. What are they actually doing with data that cheap?
That low price point is, I think, really key to understanding the long game, as you put it earlier. They're not necessarily trying to drain your bank account tomorrow. That bulk data, the names, ages, locations, SSNs, it gets aggregated. Criminals buy these huge spreadsheets, basically, to build really comprehensive profiles. And those profiles are then packaged up and sold to, well, much more sophisticated criminal outfits.
So it's not about stealing your money today. It's more about having every little piece of the puzzle ready, maybe months or even years later,
Yeah.
to commit some highly personalized, high-value fraud. They're essentially building a digital clone of you, bit by bit.
Precisely, yeah. Now, okay, if 90% of attacks are financial, we should probably touch on the other 10%. That smaller slice, it often involves attacks driven by more, let's say, personal motives. Sometimes it's just digital vandalism, or maybe just trying to prove they can break security systems, for bragging rights within hacker circles.
Right. But the really significant non-financial motive, the one that completely shifted how we think about data privacy, that was about influence, personalized control. And this is where we absolutely have to talk about the 2018 Cambridge Analytica situation with Facebook.
Oh, yes. That event really redefined the whole conversation around data, didn't it? This British company, they got hold of information on nearly 50 million Facebook users, and they took that enormous data set and used it to build psychological profiles. Their aim wasn't selling credit card numbers. It was developing software to predict how people might vote and then micro-target them with personalized political ads.
And the specific goal, as detailed in the sources we looked at, was explicitly to support Donald Trump's 2016 election campaign. They leveraged private data, often without people really knowing or giving explicit permission, to try and influence a democratic outcome.
And this just highlights that critical issue of the indelible digital footprint. That data, once it's shared, it doesn't just poof disappear when you log off. The risk it creates can stretch years into the future. I mean, we see examples where information shared on social media years ago, maybe activity that some national security agency sees as hostile, that can suddenly surface and potentially stop you from entering a country like the U.S., months or even years down the road. Your online past has real, tangible, long-term consequences.
So if those are the motives, this long game of profile building and political manipulation, where do the actual leaks happen? How does the data get out? Our source material frames this quite well, looking at the two main sides of the problem.
Exactly. You can think of it in two main ways. Side A is this constant, incredibly expensive arms race of network security. These big social media companies, they spend millions, billions even, but security methods evolve so fast, and the attackers, they often move just as quickly. Sometimes, frankly, they're just one step ahead.
And the human element, that always seems to play a part, right? But often the failure isn't just a mistake. It's what the sources call technological debt, relying on old systems that really should have been updated years ago. What does technological debt really mean in this context? Can you give an example?
Yeah, think of it like like a city having an old bridge. They know they should replace it, but it's expensive and disruptive, so they just keep patching it up. In tech, that means sticking with outdated software or security protocols. LinkedIn, for instance, was caught using something called SHA-1 for password hashing. Now, hashing is basically scrambling your password so it's unreadable. SHA-1 is an old, known-to-be weak method. It's like using a simple bicycle lock to secure a bank vault. It's just not appropriate anymore.
That's a great analogy. So the risk just builds up because companies put off the necessary, maybe costly upgrades.
Exactly. Or look at that massive attack on, 200,000 Microsoft Exchange servers worldwide. That wasn't some zero-day, super sophisticated new exploit. No, it exploited a bug in the server software that was already 8 years old. They carried that tech debt for nearly a decade before it caused this huge global incident.
Wow. Okay, so that's side A, the internal security struggles. Then we have to side B, which I think often surprises people, third-party data sharing. We tend to assume our data is safest on Facebook's or Twitter's main servers, but often the leak happens somewhere else entirely.
That's right, because the main social network itself, it's usually pretty heavily fortified. The weakest link is often in the chain of custody, you could say. Lots of other companies, marketing analytics firms, those behavioral science outfits we mentioned, they get access to network data under various agreements to analyze it, convert it, maybe even resell it. These are the third parties. And the leak happens either when the data is being transferred or directly from their servers. And frankly, those servers are often not secured to the same high standard as the original social networks.
So some company you've never even heard of, that's just, say, analyzing your vacation photos for market research trends, they end up being the weak point that exposes your password or personal details.
It increases the risk almost exponentially because the responsibility gets spread out across so many different players. It's diffuse.
Right. And once that data is out there, cybercriminals then use the social networks themselves as a starting point, like a reconnaissance tool, to plan their next moves.
They gather just enough personal info, maybe names of your pets, recent holidays you posted about, your hometown, to craft a really targeted phishing message. The message looks incredibly personalized. Maybe it mentions that trip you just took, tempting you to click a link. That link goes to a fake website designed to steal your login details and, well, ultimately your money.
And we still see manipulation through chat services too, right? That feels like an old tactic, but I guess it's more sophisticated now. That message that seems just a bit too good to be true. Maybe check out this interesting content, supposedly from someone attractive you don't know.
Oh yeah, that's classic social engineering. It's designed purely to make the recipient click a bad link or open a malicious attachment. That delivers malware, which could be spyware, or it could just be preparing your system for a bigger attack later on.
And then, of course, there's the growing risk of just outright identity cloning.
Absolutely. Criminals scrape public photos, names, basic information right from visible profiles. Then they use that to commit identity fraud. They might try to convince banks or even your friends that they are you using social engineering. We saw how vulnerable this makes platforms during those recent hacks of high-profile celebrity Twitter accounts. Trust evaporated instantly.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, moving into sort of the cutting-edge digital threats. The voice threat. Think about audio-based social networks like Clubhouse, which is all about spoken conversation.
Right. And the source pointed out that Clubhouse had some pretty significant data security issues early on. The really chilling idea here is that platforms built entirely on voice, they could potentially become the largest databases of spoken word samples in the world, all neatly tagged with accurate identity markers linking back to each user's voice print.
We've talked about deepfakes for years now, fake video, but the emerging, potentially much higher stakes threat is fake voice. With AI getting so good so fast, if someone has a large enough database of your unique vocal patterns, a criminal could potentially synthesize a perfectly convincing audio replica of your voice.
And that synthesized voice, it could be disastrously misused for identification, especially in places that rely on voice verification, like, say, high-security banking systems, or even for accessing certain institutional accounts via phone. We're moving beyond just protecting your typed passwords to needing to protect your actual vocal identity. And platforms like Clubhouse, unintentionally perhaps, provide this massive ideal training data set for hackers developing these tools.
Wow. Okay, so given this enormous evolving risk and just the sheer amount of data involved, why aren't these companies forced to do better? Which brings us to the consequences and maybe the cost of not being transparent.
Well, corporate fines are supposed to be a powerful tool, a repressive measure, really, to force companies into better data storage practices and, crucially, better disclosure when things go wrong. The fines are often calculated based on the company's turnover, sometimes even a percentage of their global turnover, to make sure they actually feel the financial pain.
And some of those fines have been absolutely staggering. Facebook got hit with that record $5 billion fine back in 2019 for the leak affecting, what, 533 million users? Marriott Hotels got a $124 million fine for a breach. Uber was fined $148 million in 2018.
And sometimes the fine isn't just about the size of the breach itself, but about the cover-up afterwards. Yahoo, for instance, got fined $85 million. Now, their 2013 breach affected 3 billion accounts, a truly massive number. But the company didn't disclose it for 3 whole years. The penalty was largely for that lack of honesty, that delay.
That distinction between dealing with the attack itself and then intentionally covering it up seems really crucial. The Uber case from 2016 really highlights the cost of silence, doesn't it? That breach hit 57 million user accounts. But instead of reporting it right away, Uber actually paid the hacker $100,000 to keep the whole thing secret.
Yeah, which of course then led to that much larger fine down the road when it inevitably came out. Those steps they took, probably thinking they were minimizing PR damage, they ended up being extremely costly for the company in the long run. They chose concealment over transparency, and the financial penalty ultimately reflected that choice.
It does raise an interesting point about the precedent set by paying hackers, though. While Uber was trying to cover up a past attack, we have the example of Lake City. They got hit by ransomware, hackers encrypted all their critical data, and even though the city was insured, the council decided to pay the ransom, almost $500,000 in Bitcoin, to get their files back. It feels like a pragmatic move in the moment, maybe, to get essential services running again, but it also directly funds the criminal ecosystem, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And it sends a very dangerous signal that ransomware attacks work, that they pay off. It encourages more attacks.
So we understand the motives, we see the weak points in security, both internal and third party, and we know the potential corporate consequences. Yet, this user paradox remains. Why aren't people, generally speaking, more discouraged by all these leaks? Why don't we all just log off for good?
It really is like that insurance analogy we sometimes hear. If nothing bad has happened to you personally yet, you tend not to worry about it too much. IT security experts constantly tell people, back up your data, back up your data. But most people only start doing it after they've suffered a really catastrophic data loss. It takes the pain to change the behavior.
And the sources definitely confirm this apathy. Most people apparently didn't even bother changing their Facebook password after that massive leak that hit 500 million users. And the problem gets worse because, as the sources note, so many people reuse the exact same password across lots of different websites and apps.
Oh, that password reuse. The absolute golden ticket for an attacker. Once they compromise one of your accounts, say, from a data breach, that stolen password potentially becomes the master key to unlock every other platform and system you use if you've reused it. It's an open door.
Okay, so if the worst happens and you find out your data was part of a leak, what are the absolute must-do actions you should take, like right away?
Right. First, immediately change the password for the account that was compromised. And crucially, change it on any other account where you might have used the same or even a similar password. Don't take chances. Second, set up two-factor authentication, 2FA, wherever it's offered. This means you need your password plus a second code, usually sent to your phone via text or an app. It makes it much, much harder for a hacker to get in, even if they somehow manage to steal your password.
So 2FA adds that vital second layer of defense. Makes sense.
Absolutely essential. And third, it's a good idea to check if specific data, like your main email address, has shown up in known breaches. There are publicly available tools online where you can verify this.
But maybe the simplest advice, the easiest tool we can all use starting right now, is just to change how we think about, how we visualize our online sharing.
Yes, exactly. The safest advice is often the simplest. It's safest not to post anything online that you wouldn't be comfortable sharing offline, in the physical world. Try this simple mental exercise. Imagine your Facebook wall or your Instagram feed as a giant public whiteboard in the middle of a busy shopping mall. Would you really walk up and willingly write your full name, your age, your home address, where you work, your specific hobbies, and maybe the names and locations of your close friends and family members for everyone to see? Probably not.
That's a powerful visual. Okay, so wrapping this up, what does it all mean? The core knowledge we've pulled from the sources seems to be this. The value of your personal data is incredibly high, and that fuels complex motives, everything from straightforward financial gain through profile building to much more opaque political manipulation. And the security risk. It's inherent. It's driven just as much by companies' own technological debt as it is by the growing reliance on potentially less secure third-party partners who handle our data.
And if you're holding out hope for some kind of mass consumer boycott to force fundamental change, well, the source material suggests that's pretty unlikely to happen. What tends to happen instead when a major leak or security scare occurs is that users simply switch to a competing network or platform. We saw that pattern clearly when WhatsApp users migrated to other messaging apps during privacy controversies.
And the really sobering reality is that this threat isn't stabilizing or going away. The sources are quite clear. The threat of cyber attacks is expected to increase, probably significantly, every single year.
Mhm. So, given that people seem more likely to switch platforms than to abandon social media altogether, and that the threat from sophisticated cyber attacks is only growing, it really raises a crucial question for you, the listener. As these platforms continuously invest in better security, but at the same time, the motivation and the methods of hackers become exponentially more advanced, do you believe that the ease, the convenience, the connection we get from being online will always end up outweighing the guaranteed and constantly evolving privacy risk?
That's definitely something to think about next time you go to share that photo or update your status. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.